do dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We got a great show for you today, folks. Really excited. We're going to be talking to Beau Hawk, president of the Knoxville Oak Ridge Central Labor Council and candidate for mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. We will also be talking about the Alabama legislative session. And then in the second half of the program, we're going to be talking to some federal employees about how they are still fighting the good fight. We'll also be talking about how Trump is saying we can't do good things for Americans because we have to pay for the war that I started. Crazy stuff. You can leave us a voicemail at any time, and you can go ahead and call in. The phone lines are open. That is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also leave us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact. Adam, we are in the final days of Alabama's legislative session. What's been going on? What's the deal?
Yeah, it's been a really busy last few days here in the Alabama legislative session. There's been a lot of advocacy groups attending the State House. There's been a lot of last-minute bills being squeezed through. And so one of the biggest issues that has really captured a lot of attention has been around the Public Service Commission and Alabama Power. Those of you here in North Alabama may not be as familiar with it because we are in the TVA region, right? We are pretty lucky in that we are served by TVA. Not to say our power bills aren't going up either. They are, it seems like. But our brothers and sisters to the south of us who are served by Alabama Power are paying, 20 to 30%?
30 to 40%.
30 to 40% more than we are here served by the public power model in the Tennessee Valley. So the Public Service Commission is the elected body. It is the state agency that is supposed to regulate Alabama Power and, utility rates. Infamously, it has not called for rate hearings in decades. I don't think it's happened since I've been on this earth. I was born in '89. I'm pretty sure it was before then. So it's been a really long time since the Public Service Commission actually, regulated the utilities like they're supposed to. And so something interesting happened, though, over the past year. In Georgia, there were some elections to their Public Service Commission, and the progressive challengers upset the establishment. And it has been a big talking point in right-wing media about so-called woke dark money that infiltrated Georgia's elections. And how dare they? The Georgia voters apparently elected folks who wanted to regulate utilities and protect ratepayers, protect the customers, aka you and me, who have to pay our bills every month. But some folks on the far right were very concerned about this. They believe it was woke dark money that led to these upsets in the election, and there was a lot of concern brought to Alabama with this. We're right next door, and I guess certain folks in or around Alabama Power were very concerned that regulators and reformers, whether they be Republican or Democrat, right, and there are reformers running on both tickets, I believe, but there was a concern that reformers could be elected to the Public Service Commission this year in 2026, and so there were efforts to change this up. And there was actually one good bill and one bad bill. The bad bill passed unanimously out of the Senate. And I say bad bill by most people's standards who were looking for more regulation of Alabama Power. The idea would be to give more power to the governor and the executive branch. And the governor would be allowed to create like an energy czar who would then oversee this Public Service Commission. It would not guarantee rate hearings or, real transparency or accountability. Well, there was a bill sponsored by Republican Mac Butler, HB 475, which was more of a reform-minded bill. It would have mandated regular rate hearings. it would have brought some accountability to the Public Service Commission. And wouldn't you know it, at the last minute, they basically combined these two bills. And so HB 475 was supported by a lot of advocacy groups, such as Energy Alabama and Alabama Arise and various other partners working on this. But it was amended. It was, kind of made into this Frankenstein bill of, different pieces of these two legislation. And so what passed ultimately was opposed by a lot of folks from the environmental community and from other communities. HB 475 did pass. It was signed by the governor. And, it's going to make some changes that could be positive. For example, the Public Service Commission will now be elected based on congressional districts. So it will be, more folks elected, and it will be based on the congressional district. And I think a lot of folks agree with that as a reasonable reform. But it does include this energy czar or, energy secretary position. And there's already rumors about who wants that job, who's angling for that job, lots of insider talk down there. But this is still going to give the governor, through this appointment, ultimate authority over the Public Service Commission. So it doesn't really address the main issues that folks had, which is the lack of accountability for Alabama Power as a monopoly in the state that is charging folks really high rates compared to not just the TVA region in the northern part of the state, but even our neighbors, in other parts of the South. So, I wanted to just shout out Energy Alabama. I thought that they did a really fantastic job in terms of fighting the good fight and educating the public. Energy Alabama sent out an email Friday that I really appreciated, kind of doing some reflection on it and of course, recapping the fact that, yes, this bill has passed. It's been signed by the governor. It's not the outcome they wanted. But it did demonstrate that a lot of people are willing to organize and speak up around these issues. And I saw that myself. I saw that people from across the political spectrum have been speaking up about their high power bills, their struggle to keep up with the rising cost of living, and, just the lack of regulation. And so I think that's been really impressive. I do not think this issue is going to go away. As a colleague or a friend of mine shared with me the other day, every month folks are going to be reminded of how they feel about this issue, right? Every month they're going to get their power bill, and they're going to be reminded how they feel. They're going to be reminded of the cost of living increases and the concerns around affordability. So, Alabama Power is a very powerful company. It has a lot of influence. It has a lot of political operations that it deploys throughout the state. And it's clear that it has a lot of, influence with lawmakers in both parties, if you look at the vote. But it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out in the elections, whether it is a campaign issue for either the May 19th primary or for the general election in November. I do anticipate a lot of energy around these Public Service Commission elections. And I think there's going to be some talk, with a lot of these candidates on, whose side were you really on? Are you on the power company side or are you on the customer side? And that's a fair question to ask, I think, for a lot of people. So that took up a lot of energy in the legislative session this week. That wasn't, necessarily the only thing going on. Senator Orr still had a bill, SB 57, which is kind of to police SNAP recipients and what they can use their food stamps on, to try to ban like candy or soda from being purchased with food stamps. That bill is still out there. We'll see, if it gets rammed through here at the last minute. There's also a really concerning bill that is affecting faculty senates and tenured professors. Let me see if I can go ahead and pull up that bill number for us. But the United Campus Workers, they have put out some information about this. AAUP has as well. And there's a bill that would more or less strip the support or strip the ability of the faculty senate to do much of anything, really. It would also strip the importance of tenure. And so this is HB 580. And United Campus Workers has been, trying to educate folks about this bill alongside others. But HB 580, that one really concerns me because it really could have a detrimental impact on our universities across the state, their ability to retain and recruit professors. I would imagine it's already pretty hard to recruit some academics to come to the state of Alabama to work in some of our universities, given their pay scale, given the lack of collective bargaining, given the political environment, and frankly, the quality of life of the neighborhoods they're probably going to move into. And so the idea of making this worse and possibly risking accreditation of these universities, all because some lawmaker was inspired by some nonsense in Texas, apparently, very concerning. So that's still out there. We'll see what happens. My understanding is that they will be back in session on Tuesday. So it's not too late to reach out to your lawmakers. I would encourage you to reach out to both your senator and your representative to let them know how you feel about any particular issue that's still alive. And the last thing I'll say on this legislative session stuff is that there were some really good bills that were sponsored that could have helped working people. There were three in particular that caught my eye. SB 171 by Robert Stewart, that would have established a minimum wage for the first time in the state of Alabama. We don't have a minimum wage here. We follow the federal rates, which haven't changed since 2009. It's still $7.25 an hour. It's still $2.13 an hour for tipped employees. This was a really modest bill. It would have only set the minimum wage at $10 an hour. Personally, I would have gone much higher than that. But unfortunately, it didn't even get out of committee. And same with a couple of other really important bills that were attaching regulations to tax incentives. Alabama gives billions of dollars in tax incentives to big companies to come here or to stay here. And there was one bill, the clawback bill, which would have clawed back tax incentives from companies that violate child labor or human trafficking laws, right? So that seems important. It seems like common sense. In fact, I had a conversation with one representative last year about this bill, and he couldn't believe it wasn't already the law. It's so common sense. Again, this bill didn't make it out of committee this year. And we also had a good bill, the Pro-Family Workplace Act, sponsored by Representative Neil Rafferty out of Birmingham, that would have attached tax incentives to various pro-family workplace protections. Everything from, not counting bathroom breaks against your break time, like walking to and from the bathroom, to ensuring that you had emergency leave, right? Or to ensure that you are not forced to work mandatory overtime on the weekends. So that was a good bill, and it at least is a good conversation starter. But, again, it didn't get a fair hearing. What the legislature did spend some time on was renaming the Gulf of Mexico. They spent time targeting immigrants, and Ernie Yarborough, in particular, out of Lawrence County area, has really had some nasty legislation targeting immigrant communities, and they are still trying to push that through. And so it's been interesting to me to see that, they have spent time on trying to give more power to the power company. They've spent time on silliness like the Gulf of America. They're trying to institute 10 Commandments and school prayers. They're doing stuff like that, but they didn't have the time to address working class issues, like making sure these big companies are not exploiting children illegally in manufacturing environments. Kind of shameful. It seems like a pretty sorry reflection of priorities. Frankly, I am ready for the legislative session to be over, because the sooner it's over, the sooner they cannot do anything else that's detrimental to the state. There are some good criminal justice reform bills that are being pushed, including from Representative Chris England out of the Tuscaloosa area. Also want to give a shout out to Representative Laura Hall and to Senator Sam Gavan up here in the North Alabama area. They also had some good bills regarding paroles. We have such a broken criminal justice system in this state there's so many issues, from the front end to the back end, really, and everything in between. So there are a lot of reforms that need to take place there, but I was glad to see at least some movement on a couple of good bills there. So, I would encourage you to reach out to your lawmakers, let them know how you feel about issues that are still pending. You can go to the Alabama channel and watch or view any debates, alabamachannel.org. You can also go to the Alabama legislature's website called Allison, and you can search for a bill. You can find out, where the bill is in terms of committee status or whether it's pending a vote. It's going to be hard to keep up these last few days. They like to get a little squirrely with the calendar and sneak stuff through. So, do your best to pay attention. Check out the good advocacy groups out there that are paying attention. Let people know the legislative session's almost over, but it's still there. So we got to pay attention at least for a little while longer.
It's so crazy that the legislators were willing to do this Public Service Commission bill so quickly during the session when people were obviously very upset about it. I mean, it'll be interesting to hear the justifications for this as the bill gets implemented and legislators are asked about it on the campaign trail. How are they going to be justifying their vote? That'll be interesting to see.
Right. I mean, I will tell you that I had, some conversation with my state representative, and he said, "Why are you worried about this? You're in the TVA region. What's it to you?"
Yeah, because I care about my fellow Alabamians.
Well, that thought never crossed his mind, apparently. Some of us have empathy. I hate to break it to you. Some of us are concerned about our neighbors.
And if that's really if as a representative that only represents people in the TVA region, you really just don't care, you should at the very least abstain.
Right.
I mean, if you don't care,
I don't have a dog in the fight.
I don't have a dog in the fight. It doesn't matter to me. I don't understand. I'm just a little baby. I don't goo gaga. I don't know what's going on. Abstain, as opposed to, you took the side. You voted yay. Defend your vote.
Right.
I mean, that's so freaking irritating. I hate it when people refuse to justify what they did.
Right. Just stand on it. Hey, tell me the truth. Why, maybe it's just more convenient, right, to go along with it. And if you tell me that's why you did it, I won't respect you for it, but I'll at least respect you for being honest with me.
Right.
Yeah.
844-899-TVLR is the phone number. 844-899-8857 is the phone number. Let us know what you think about any of these bills in the Alabama legislative session. You can also leave us a written comment at tvlr.fm/contact. Last weekend, primarily out of an agitation with what's going on at the national level, there were No Kings protests all across the country. 3,300 events in all 50 states, an estimated 8 million participants. In Alabama, there were 22 events, and in Huntsville alone, there were 6,000 attendees. So, I mean, really, really big turnouts for this. Lots of people really upset about it, upset about what the Trump administration is doing. There's a big focus on the war, on the cost of living, and on executive overreach. The AFL-CIO, which is the nation's Federation of Unions, has some 65 union affiliates, represents 15 million union members, and many of the individual unions endorsed it as well. The president of the AFL-CIO spoke at the What's Next After No Kings live stream, and here are some of her remarks about why her and her members went out and demonstrated and supported these demonstrations, and what it is important for unions and community members to be doing next. Let's play clip one.
We showed that whether it's a big city, a small town, or deep in rural America, people are refusing to accept the status quo right now. But as I looked at the signs, of course, we love the signs, listen to the speakers, one thing became crystal clear to me, and that's the anger that we're feeling isn't necessarily partisan, it's personal. we need to have a real conversation about where we go from here. But I think we've been told this story for a long time that our country is so divided. But when I look at the numbers, I'm looking at the 87% of Americans who say we're in a cost of living crisis. I look at the 90% who are stressed out about the price of groceries. And so whether people have a D or an R or an I or whatever next to their name, rent is still too high. Your paycheck still doesn't stretch to the end of the month. And you're still worried that the boss or the people running this country don't give a damn about your family. So that is our common ground. We're fed up with an economy that treats workers like an expense to be minimized instead of the engine that makes everything run. So we have to meet each other in that shared experience. Because if we can agree that shit costs too much and we're all getting squeezed, then we can start working together to fix it. So how do we keep this momentum moving? Well, for the labor movement, we have 2 days coming up that are deeply held times of reflection on workplace safety, immigrant workers, and the sometimes brutal fight that those who came before us waged to ensure that workers have rights. And so those 2 dates that are coming up are Workers' Memorial Day on April 28th, and of course, May Day, May 1st, International Workers' Day. So this year, those 2 days aren't just days of reflection, they're days of demand. And especially now as we're seeing attacks on our safety standards, our civil rights, our very right to organize, we're standing up for a worker-centered vision of America. And what is that vision? Well, a vision where we aren't just surviving, we're thriving. A vision where AI serves the worker, not the bottom line. And instead of pouring billions into a war we didn't ask for, that we invest that money right here in our schools, our hospitals, our infrastructure. So from now through November, the AFL-CIO and our state and local movements are going to be in the streets, at the work sites, making sure everyone knows the issues at stake in the next election, that we're protecting everyone's right to vote, and making sure that working people are unified in our economic demands and that every single vote is counted.
Liz Shuler, again, president of the AFL-CIO, the nation's largest federation of unions, representing 65 unions and 15 million working people. She came out of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the IBEW. They're talking about why unions participated in the No Kings demonstrations. Lots of really common sense stuff. I mean, we're going to be talking about this later in the program, but Trump's budget request just came out, and I didn't realize... I mean, it's just so shocking. Calling for $1.5 trillion in defense spending, $400 billion more than we spent last year. I mean, $400 billion, and that's annual. That's what he's calling for, is for the annual defense budget to be increased by $400 billion. And how many people are going to be asking him, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? When programs that would cost less money than that, actually, like universal free childcare. Universal free childcare would maximum in the United States cost $200 billion a year. And he was just on tape last week saying, oh, well, we can't do childcare because we've got wars. $200 billion a year for universal child care, universal free college for everybody who can and wants to attend, would cost something like $100 billion a year. And then, if we did both of those two programs, which would be huge for working people in the United States, just life-changing, really paradigm-shifting levels of quality of life improvement. Free college, no more college debt, and free childcare. Huge. If we did both of those things instead of not even cutting the defense budget, if we did both of those things instead of the increase that Trump wants to the budget, we would still have $100 billion more to play with. Absolutely. And in that $1.5 trillion defense budget, there is no call for raises for civilian employees. For civilian workers at the Department of Defense, no call for raises, despite the fact that the Department of Defense would be getting $400 billion more. Absolutely insane.
Makes you wonder who gets all that.
It does make you wonder, who is that money going to? Because apparently it's not the workers. It's not working people.
Yeah. And, I thought it was important that so many people did come out, and I think it's important that labor be engaged with these movements. I've seen a lot of online chatter about No Kings and whether it's good or whether it's bad or whether it's, helping, hurting. And I've seen a lot of debate around it, and I've not really waded into a lot of that because the way I look at it is, as an organizer, if I have an opportunity to engage with people about working class solidarity and about how we can organize collectively to change our conditions and to make things better, I'm going to take that opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's why I was there in Montgomery and was happy to speak at the Montgomery rally because, they wanted someone to talk about the power of unions. And, well, hell yeah, I'm happy to help with that because I think folks do need to hear about the power of unions. If they're upset about the way this economy is rigged, if they're upset about the way the billionaire class has dominated our political system, one of the ways we can fix that is through rebuilding union power. It's not a coincidence that when we won the New Deal, we also had the greatest upsurge of labor organizing in this country, right? We had workers organizing workers all over the place, all over the economy, all over the country. And our power grew to such an extent that we won things like Social Security and unemployment and the minimum wage. We won legal union rights and collective bargaining. We were able to win that through people power, right? And so I think people sometimes forget. We take these rights and these laws for granted. Less and less so now, I think, because people are starting to realize that just because you have something in law or on paper doesn't mean it's always going to be there for you, and doesn't mean it can't be undermined or unraveled. But labor rights were not just handed out to us. They weren't given easily. We had to fight for those. We had to fight for civil rights. We had to fight for women's rights. And so I think it's important that everyday people get engaged, whatever that looks like. Maybe you're not the person who's going to be at a protest or speaking at a rally, but there are other things that you can do and you can find ways to contribute because we've got to be building our collective power as working people. We've got to be building our own institutions. We've got to be supporting each other in our struggles, organizing in our workplaces, but also organizing in our communities and neighborhoods, building tenant unions, building other forms of cooperative power. That's what we need. I think we've got to have a wave of people power like we haven't seen in generations, since at least the 60s, right? Since at least that wave of people power that was able to change this country. That's what it takes. Everyday people standing up.
Yeah, I don't know where I saw this, but somebody said that it's important to think about these No Kings protests like an organizer, and an organizer is not going to look at millions of people showing up opposing reactionary anti-worker policies and totally dismiss it. In Jacobin, there was a good paragraph. Anyone on the socialist left who thinks the fight against Trump's authoritarianism isn't our fight because it merely pits liberals against conservatives is very deeply missing the point. Liberal capitalist democracy is profoundly flawed and its promises are destined to go unfulfilled, but as workers' movements have always understood, it's a good starting point for the struggle for something better. On that note, we're going to take a break. We will be right back with the Valley Labor Report. We're going to be talking to Beau Hawk, candidate for mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, and president of the Knoxville-Oak Ridge Central Labor Council. We'll be taking your calls at 844-899-TVLR and more. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online, on the radio, from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We just finished talking about the Alabama legislative session and doing a recap of last weekend's No Kings protests. We will soon be talking to Beau Hawk, candidate for mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, and president of the Knoxville Oak Ridge Labor Council. All that and more on today's show. If you'd like to call in, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also send us a written note at tvlr.fm. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, tvlr.fm, but we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. One of our biggest sources of funding comes directly from our listeners, so if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or make a one-time donation, you can go to tvlr.fm/donate or patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. We've got a bunch of cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, if you're a member of a union, then you should think about getting your local, district council, region, or international union to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that.
Hey y'all, let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsors. We want to welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, WMSP, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. We are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out at laborradionetwork.org. And as most of you know, we are not media professionals, just some diehard union members who want to amplify the voices of the working class in the American South. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or first-time listener, we appreciate you spending some time with us.
Every week in the South, workers organize new unions, they bargain new contracts, they fight for good legislation and against bad legislation, and they put the boss in their place. Here are all the stories that we could find from March 20th to April 3rd. Over the last 2 weeks, 634 workers across 15 bargaining units unionized, 39 workers across 3 bargaining units decertified their union, 16 workers across 2 bargaining units withdrew their petition for a union election, 9,539 Florida public sector workers in 7 bargaining units recertified their unions, 709 workers in 14 bargaining units have gone public with their union campaigns, and 34 workers in 1 bargaining unit are trying to decertify their union. Some of the new campaigns are 428 workers at the Doe Run Company in Viburnum, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA, Local 829. 68 workers at Gold Belt Incorporated in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Union of Electrical Workers, IUE-CWA. 21 workers at Starbucks in Inwood, West Virginia, filed a petition to hold a union election with Starbucks Workers United. 49 workers at CPC Logistics in Jackson, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters Local 600. Workers likely pushed by their employer and with help from the National Right to Work Foundation filed a petition to decertify the Teamsters Local 728 as the union representing 34 workers at Republic Services in Calhoun, Georgia. I thought this group of workers sounded familiar, and it's because in November of 2023, they won a union election. In January of 2025, they defeated a decertification attempt, and all the while, Republic Services has slow-walked negotiations with the union. And finally, 31 workers at Pepsi in Lithonia, Georgia, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters Local 528. In campaign updates, the Teamsters have won multiple big victories at Amazon in the last 2 weeks. First, they won a case at the National Labor Relations Board forcing Amazon to concede that its workers at all of its locations have the right to strike, that they will not retaliate against workers who strike, that they will restore benefits to workers who struck and had them illegally taken away, and that they will post a notice of these things in all of their facilities. Then the National Labor Relations Board ruled that Amazon must bargain with the New York workers who organized years ago, stating that the company had illegally refused to recognize the union. That case will likely be appealed to the federal courts, but it's nevertheless a huge win. And while we're talking about Amazon, I'll mention that new filings now show they spent over $26 million on union-busting lawyers in just the last year. In election results, 144 workers at Graphic Packaging International in Waco, Texas, voted 104 to 16 in favor of unionization with the United Steelworkers. 81 workers at Temco Logistics in Lithonia, Georgia, voted 42 to 33 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters, Local 528. 61 workers at WEHT WTVW in Henderson, Kentucky, voted 30 to 11 in favor of unionization with the National Association of Broadcast Employees and Technicians, NABET CWA. 7 workers at Wells Fargo Bank in Apex, North Carolina, voted 2 to 5 in favor of decertifying Wells Fargo Workers United, WFWU, CWA. This is a big blow for the CWA's campaign to organize Wells Fargo. After picking up momentum and organizing several locations, new wins have stalled, and now one unit has decertified the union. 5,133 workers at Miami-Dade County and the Public Health Trust of Miami-Dade County in Miami, Florida, voted 510 to 5 in favor of recertifying the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME, Local 1363 is their union, and 1,963 water and sewer department workers at the Miami-Dade County government in Miami, Florida, voted 1,017 to 4 in favor of recertifying AFSCME Local 121 as their union. If you'd like to read more about Florida's public sector union elections, you can go to caringclassrevolt.com and read their monthly newsletter. In grievances, unfair labor practices, and court cases, the Department of Veterans Affairs is violating a court order and the rights of their workers while saying, "No, we're not." A federal judge recently required the department to restate the union's collective bargaining agreement, granting the union's request for a preliminary injunction while the case plays out. The VA says that they have restored the contract. However, they say that restoration of the contract doesn't mean they have to follow it. The VA continues to deny benefits and workplace protections outlined in the contract, including parental leave benefits. The union cited in court an instance of a worker seeking to use 4 weeks of unpaid leave after she gave birth in accordance with their union contract, and her supervisor denied the request, saying, quote, "The union hasn't been reinstated, and you will need to report to work as scheduled." This affects more than 300,000 VA workers who are represented by a union. In strikes and bargaining updates, 17,000 school bus drivers working for First Student and organized with the Teamsters nationwide just secured a tentative agreement with the company after voting by 88% to authorize a strike if they don't get a fair contract offer. The Teamsters say that the new agreement establishes a national foundation for economics that will be applied across all local agreements, including stronger retirement benefits, improved access to health care benefits, and robust contractual protections for all members. Members will be voting on the agreement in the coming weeks. In political and legislative updates, more employers are illegally using child labor than 10 years ago, and Republicans want to make that easier. Specifically, since 2015, the number of child labor violations has increased 5-fold. And the number of minors illegally employed in hazardous occupations has more than doubled. Those cases include some where 15 and 16-year-olds have been killed on the job. And yet, it's in this environment that 17 states have rolled back and loosened child labor regulations. A popular regulation to roll back has been the requirement for youth work permits, even though The Guardian notes that states that require youth work permits have more than 30% fewer minors involved in violations of child labor law. Public sector workers in Virginia just got a bill passed that would reverse a ban on public sector collective bargaining that has been in place since 1948. Steps were made to erode that prohibition some years ago when the legislature allowed municipalities to engage in collective bargaining if they decided to, but this bill would mandate that all public sector employers in Virginia, state and municipal, except for colleges, engage in collective bargaining with their workers if the workers decide to unionize. The bill now sits on the governor's desk, but some unions are upset that colleges are left out. And the CWA mentioned that the governor has the authority to make changes to the legislation and send it back to the Virginia General Assembly for further consideration. If we missed something, let us know about your union updates at tvlr.fm/contact, and we might include it on the next roundup. Also, subscribe to the newsletter at tvlr.fm, where you will get the exhaustive version of Last Week in Southern Labor. It's like we only get to maybe half of the updates that we have on the radio. So if you want to get the full thing, subscribe to the newsletter at tvlr.fm. We've got Beau Hawk on the line. Beau Hawk is a member of the Iron Workers Local 384 in Tennessee, president of the Knoxville Oak Ridge Central Labor Council, a representative of the Knoxville Building and Construction Trades Council, and now candidate for mayor of Knox County. Beau, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Jacob. It's good to be back on the program.
It's great to have you. Really excited about this conversation. And you've been on the like I said, you've been on the program before, but for folks for whom, this is their first time hearing you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a, working class guy, living here in Knoxville, Tennessee. I, like you said, I work for the Building Trades Council, which is all the construction unions. So I, kind of help them with working with contractors and getting more union work on some of these major nuclear projects coming to the region, kind of what we talked about last time I was on the show. And as president of the Central Labor Council here, we've got 30 plus unions, thousands of workers in the area. So just kind of trying to bring that coalition together. And that's what I've been working on for the past few years leading up to this campaign.
And you've done a really great job. For folks who want to check out some of that, you can see our last interview with Beau, where he talks about some of his work bringing the unions together in Knoxville and Oak Ridge. And like you said, this has all been kind of building up to your ability to run this campaign. And so why are you running for mayor of Knox County?
Yeah, so Knox County is one of the most rapidly growing counties in America right now. It's, a lot of growth. And the problem is that really working families here in Knox County are bearing most of the burden for that growth. Rent in the area has gone up more than 60% between 2019 and 2024, with wages only going up by 26.7%. Infrastructure is woefully inadequate to keep up with the growth, much less, traffic is absurd here right now with the amount of growth that's happening in Knox County. So I'm running because I think that Knox County deserves leadership that'll actually put working families first and build an economy here locally that will actually work for the people that live here and not just those that are investing here, because that's the only way that we're all going to be more successful here in Knox County. And it's really, part of it too is that the politicians that have been running this county for the past couple decades, they just treat, as particularly the mayor's office, as a stepping stone. They just go through the motions, play musical chairs with these offices, and move on to higher things without really focusing on. They're really focused on the next election instead of the next generation here. So I'm trying to put a stop to that and get in there and actually represent the interests of working people.
You mentioned some of the problems that people in Knox County are facing. I mean, rent increasing 60%. I mean, that's a lot. You mentioned traffic being really, really terrible in Knoxville. Folks in Huntsville and Chattanooga can relate to that. What are some of the things that you would want to do in office to address those problems?
Definitely, we got to have better planning. We got to have, we got to have our development happening with higher density around the core and actually where infrastructure is already put in place to support that development. We don't have enough housing stock to drive prices down for working people. We've got a lot of really restrictive policies on those kind of things. And I think really it would help to prevent more outward sprawl where there is no infrastructure in place into the rural parts of the county. And we could kind of preserve some of that rural character of the farther out areas of the county for the people that, like to live there. It's so definitely focusing on things like that, planning infrastructure, having more housing, and definitely better jobs, better workforce pipeline, more partnerships with the trades and the school system, and making sure that when employers come to this community, we've got a workforce that isn't being forced to relocate to a neighboring county, but also are guaranteed good jobs, and not just some static number of jobs that are promised with some kind of major capital project, but actually, metrics that involve quality and retirement and benefits and safety.
You talked about metrics related to kind of general job quality and safety and stuff like that. And as somebody who has been so involved in the labor movement as a representative of the Building and Construction Trades Council, I'm not sure if you have ever personally negotiated a contract or not, but with an employer, but you've certainly at the very least read a bunch of contracts. And so you feel like, I'm assuming that your experience advocating for unions and working with employers, working with union employers, makes you sort of uniquely suited to be able to identify not just metrics for job quality and safety that would be good for workers, but also what can be done by employers. You have worked with employers who have a lot of these metrics and they're not going bankrupt, right? So you've got a kind of idea of what's realistic too.
Yeah, exactly. Because really, particularly my experience working for the building trades, we are wanting, just like any union, we want a win-win situation with these employers. We want them to be successful. We want them to make money. And I think everybody is much better off when you have something in writing that guarantees better conditions for your workers. So, I'm very experienced with working with the business community and understanding their interests as well. But there just has to be more balance in the equation here. And I think that's what is guaranteed by something like a project labor agreement that we've discussed previously on the show. But those are the kind of things that we really need to secure a better standard of living for workers here.
And so you talked about better planning, more dense planning at the core because for one, that's where the infrastructure is, and also you can, by doing that, you can kind of preserve the rural character of some of the outlying areas, there were some other things. And so can you talk to us about what are the actual levers that the mayor of Knox County has to accomplish those things? Because I know in different places, different offices really have pretty vastly different powers. There are strong mayoral systems and weak mayoral systems. What sort of power does the mayor of Knox County have to enact your agenda?
It's limited in some ways, but it's an influential position. And I think a big part of that is being the convener and making sure the right people are at the table. But as the county mayor, unlike the city of Knoxville, it's not, the same kind of strong mayor system. So that the mayor is not chairing county commission or anything like that, but the mayor does set the initial budget that goes in front of the county commission and works with the commissioners to develop that budget. So there's, a lot of authority to kind of set the goals from the outset, and that kind of gets worked on from there with input from the commissioners and what they ultimately decide on. But other than that, there is, administrative and operational authorities over things like the library system. But, there are limitations when it comes to things like, the school system has its own board, and then, situations like with the sheriff's office, the sheriff is a constitutionally elected officer. So you got to work. There's a lot of working with the other kind of people in the county government that have control some of those other levers of power.
And, I don't know if you would say this, but I think that probably being a union representative and negotiating and working with employers, people, literally across the table, as they say, kind of, again, makes you uniquely qualified to be able to work with people who maybe have different interests and some different interests and some aligned interests, and work and try to align as much as possible to get people going down the same path.
Absolutely, I think so. Yeah, I mean, coalition building has been my primary focus for years now, and like you said, when it comes to negotiating or organizing, I've spent years sitting at the table with employers or workers or people in the community that are just trying to make this place better for themselves and their families. And there's always been disagreements at those tables. It's never been a situation where everybody agreed from the outset, but it's all about finding what we have in common, what unifies us. And I think there are things that are no-brainers, common sense things that we can get around instead of getting sucked into these really distracting culture war kind of politics, or having the national kind of conversation coming down here at the county level, which I'm really alarmed by how much that has been happening lately. But I mean, I think everybody would like to just have a more stable, reliable, transparent government infrastructure that works for them, and a place where their hard work pays off. And they're able to, put down roots and start a family if they want to, and build a future for themselves and their children.
Your campaign really seems like pretty common sense stuff for me, but you are at this point the nominee for the Democratic Party, and I think that the Republicans, they already have a nominee, or are they still in their primary? But I'm assuming that there are some differences between your platform and your opponents. What would you say that the biggest differences are?
Yeah, so there's 3 Republicans in the primary right now. I'm unopposed in the Democratic primary, and that's going to be decided on May 5th. But so there's 2 county commissioners currently sitting that are running for mayor. There's Kim Frazier and Larson Jay, and then there's the current school board chair, Betsy Henderson. There's definitely difference among them, but I mean, our focus is definitely, there's a stark contrast, I think, because I'm coming from a background that's really focused on workers, as we've been kind of talking about. And there's a lot of, the arguments that they're having are over like whether or not we raise taxes and things like that, where, I've actually been a little bit more reluctant on the issue than some of my Republican opponents of raising taxes, despite the looming debt crisis and the revenue issues we're having in the county, because people are struggling. So it's not something I really want to do out of the gate. But yeah, I think there's a lot of conversation on that side, where there's, this desire by some of the candidates to just put up the drawbridge and say nobody else is coming in, and we're just going to stop all this growth. We're just going to have, NIMBYism run rampant, and we're not going to, that's how we're going to somehow solve our infrastructure issues, is to just stop development when we're already massive quantities of units down in housing stock. So I think, some of the Republican candidates agree with that, but they differ a lot with me on how to solve those issues.
What's it like being a working class person running for office? I mean, you're not independently wealthy. You don't have millions of dollars that you can loan your campaign. What is that like?
It's interesting. I mean, it's been a really good experience. It's very new to me. I'm running against 3 career politicians, and I've never done something like this before. So, learning as I go. But it's been very overwhelmingly positive reaction to the campaign. I've really been enjoying talking to constituents and hearing from them, and hearing how much this message is resonating with them, because it's speaking to the economic realities that they're facing. But yeah, it's interesting, because I've really had to kind of dial it back. There's a lot of really specifics that we can get into. And my opponents are pretty adept at that, because they're already in county government. But at the end of the day, they're part of what has caused this issue. So really, I've had constituents encouraging me to just stick with the basics, just, what the really essential kind of problems that we're dealing with. I mean, that's what I just kind of try to keep bringing it back to. It's not, it's just a matter of political will to solve these issues. And we're just kind of getting off into all these different tangents. Kind of fancy ways of wording things. But so that's been really, a cool kind of aspect of it, is to just, be real about things and talk to other workers and then build something up like this. It's been a really good experience.
What kind of support would you say that you're getting right now?
Getting a lot of support, a lot of young people. I think 80% of the following for the campaign on social media is under the age of 35.
Wow.
Got a lot of union members, a lot of people that have not voted previously. And when I say union members, I mean union members of all political stripes, because I'm making this, it's not a left versus right thing. It's a, bottom versus top kind of issue. I mean, we're trying to really, just make this place better for workers. And I see that resonating with people, Republican, conservative, liberal, Democrat. So it's a broad coalition right now, but it's been a lot of support coming out.
Beau Hawk, where can people learn more about your candidacy?
Check out the website, hawkforknox.com. And then on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads, currently we have Hawk for Knox Mayor as the tag for that.
All right. Beau Hawk, president of the Knoxville Oak Ridge Central Labor Council and candidate for mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We're going to be taking a break. We will be right back. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857 if you'd like to call in. Be right back. The Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communication system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth. All wealth should go to labor. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Appreciate everybody hanging out. If you're tuning in online, go ahead and like the stream, subscribe to the channel. Give us 5 stars if you're listening to us as a podcast. We're coming up on the end of the first half, but if you find us online at The Valley Labor Report on YouTube or Facebook, you can continue watching. We've got a great conversation lined up with a couple of members of IFPTE who work at the Corps of Engineers who've got a story for us. We're also going to be talking some more about Trump and playing a clip from him. So make sure you check that out. TVLR.fm/contact if you'd like to send us a note. And 844-899-TVLR. 844-899-8857 if you'd like to call in. Adam, what should people be looking out for?
Yeah, go to labornotes.org/events, and you can take a look at some of the online trainings that they have this month. On April 13th, they're going to have a stewards workshop dealing with difficult supervisors. That is limited capacity, so really only for stewards and elected officers who work with stewards. But please do check that out on April 13th at 7 p.m. Central. And the very next day, they have the first part of Winning a Strong Contract. So this workshop, Winning a Strong Contract, is going to be April 14th and 21st. From 6:30 to 8 p.m. Central on those Tuesdays. And so if you are going to be going into bargaining soon, or maybe not, maybe you just finished bargaining and want to kind of reflect on it. But this seems like a really great workshop. Again, that's April 14th and 21st, a 2-parter, Winning a Strong Contract. Of course, the Big Labor Notes Conference in June is sold out, but you can join the wait list. That is June 12th through the 14th. Really excited to be there. Looking forward to it. And here closer to home, there was, Indivisible organized event that is going to be planned for April 18th here in Huntsville. So this is going to be at the Butler Green on Campus 805 in Huntsville. Again, that's April 18th from 2 to 5 p.m. It is a spring fling. So kind of a family fun day sort of vibe. There will be political candidates there. There will be organizations tabling there. There will be like fun games and such for the kiddos. So it seems like a cool event. Seems like a good way to, just meet some people. Do believe the Labor Council will be out there that afternoon talking to folks. So come by and see us if you're local. Again, that's April 18th, that afternoon, 2 to 5 p.m. at Campus 805. And the last plug I have for you is to go ahead and save those dates. You heard Liz Schuler earlier in her clip talk about it, but April 28th is Workers' Memorial Day. And, of course, May 1st is May Day, International Workers' Day. So those will be happening, coming up in just a few weeks. And if you don't already have some plans, be looking to find out what's going on in your neck of the woods. The AFL-CIO has a lot of resources around Workers' Memorial Day, and I know May Day Strong and various other organizations are working on May Day events. There's going to be some stuff happening across the state here in Alabama, I'm sure elsewhere. So if you are involved in organizing any kind of event on Workers' Memorial Day or for May Day, or both, anything you got going on, leave us a voicemail, 844-899-TVLR. That's 844-899-8857. Give us a call, leave us a voicemail, let us know what's happening in your neck of the woods. If you've got a rally, you got a workshop, you've got any sort of event happening to celebrate worker power, to remember workers killed on the job, and to just really bring folks together in solidarity as working class people. Any sort of events or actions you have, please do let us know. Leave us a voicemail. We'd love to know about it. We'd love to play your voicemail on the show and spread the word of your events.
Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Got a bunch of people hanging out with us in the chat. Reading York 1991 says, why was the Teamsters president at Senator Mullins' Homeland Security confirmation hearing? Are they buddies now? WTF. Yeah, they are buddies. It's really embarrassing, actually. He should be embarrassed. It's pretty lame. You can check out our we just reacted to a clip of Sean O'Brien last week, so if you want to, you can check that out. We got a caller on the line. This caller is from a 256 area code. 256 area code. Let's go ahead and bring them on the air. Dwayne, thanks for calling in. What's up?
Well, hey, Jacob. Hey, Adam. Well, you were talking earlier about the legislative session, Adam, and I don't think you mentioned it. And it's really big as far as you guys are concerned with labor movement. And that's Ernie Yarborough. Did you know that he actually, at the very last minute, put in a bill to keep the teachers' unions from being able to, it lets you opt out of the union anytime you want to instead of the 10-day window. And it makes it where you don't use Alabama government systems to be able to pay your dues. Did you know that, Adam?
I just saw that yesterday on 1819 News.
And listen, the way that it's really detrimental is that they numbered the bill 666, and he's equating that, it looks like to me, with the teachers union and the and unions in general, which I thought, and it's the Freedom Foundation that's really big on that. And I thought that's just really a detrimental, horrible thing to just be attempting to do in an underhanded kind of way there, guys.
Yeah,
I agree. I didn't think very, very targeted and just unreasonable, because it doesn't really cost the state anything. There's no problem here. Other organizations are allowed to make deductions. You can make deductions to United Way, for example, if you're a teacher. And so I appreciate you flagging that, because you're right. That did get filed here at the last minute. So I guess he was doing it for attention, since it was a little too late to pass this year. But AEA ought to be concerned about it next year. That's for sure.
Yeah. Thanks for the heads up, Dwayne.
Well, I thought I'd bring it to your attention. Great work. Talk to y'all later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Got another couple callers on the line. We got one from a 719 area code. Let's go ahead and bring the 719 area code into on the air. 719 area code, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, guys. I'm Steven Stockton. I'm calling from Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Steven from Colorado. What's on your mind?
I just want to reach out and thank you all for everything you're doing, raising labor awareness throughout the country. Speaking of May Day, we do have an event here in Colorado Springs on May 1st. We're going to have it at Acacia Park. It's going to be 2 to 6. It's going to be alongside the local DSA, and I'm a member of UC Health Workers, local 7799 with the CWA. So lots of fun for the kids. Going to be entertainment, worker solidarity across the board. So come out, have some free food, and have a good time.
Awesome. Thanks for letting us know, Stephen. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. And I know I've met a few really great brothers and sisters from Colorado labor movement over the years. Lots of good stuff happening out there. So y'all keep up the good work.
We got another caller on the line. If you'd like to get in line, 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857. This one is from a 317 area code. 317 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, y'all. It's the Heartland Teamster. I just wanted to call in. I work Saturdays, but I'm off this Saturday, so I wanted to call in, and I saw your guys' sort of special about Sean O'Brien, and I wanted to call in, sort of just voice my disappointment with the union overall, from the presidency on down to the shop floor. Sean O'Brien is cozying up to Republicans. It's pretty clear that this isn't just about going with pro-labor politicians. This is a move from the Democrats to the Republicans. Otherwise, he would be talking to actual pro-labor types like AOC. He was on his podcast, Better Bad Ideas, which is just an embarrassing, every time an episode comes out, it just gets worse and worse. But he has a podcast where he and a couple of other Teamsters are going after Mom Donnie before the mayoral election, and it's like,
well, he did a
Mom
podcast
Donnie
literally with Andrew Cuomo.
Right. So this is, and it's like, if you know anything about these centrist Democrats, they are not pro-labor. The pro-labor Democrats are the Mom Donnies and the AOCs, But this guy, he's talking about, Republicans, the Trump administration. I've gotten things from the Trump administration, and it's like what? Like some low-level flunky, saying hey, we should support the Railway Labor Act, and it's all the Republicans he's hanging out with aren't even supporting the Railway Labor Act. It's the Ohio Republicans that are supporting the Railway Labor Act. I mean, obviously, right? Because it's a big deal for their constituency. But you've also got the joint council, the two joint councils down in Texas supporting Greg Abbott, who has done nothing for Teamsters. Actually, he has made it easier for automated for platooning is what they call it, and it's where there's a driver in one truck and there's an automated truck behind the driver, right, pulling another trailer. They made it easier to test that out on Texas highways. And when he was Attorney General, I think it was, anybody can correct me in the chat if they know, but I think it was when he was the Attorney General, they made it harder to collect dues out of the paycheck for public workers. So you're down here supporting, and it's this Teamsters versus everybody mentality where we're circling the wagons around our own union. And it's like on the shop floor, when you're organizing a shop, and I used to before I was in the Teamsters, I was a SALT for SEIU and I worked with Unite Here. And when you are organizing a shop and you have one person support the boss out of fear or personal benefit, that makes the whole campaign weaker. It's the same thing in the labor movement, where a union, where they're supporting the boss's representative in government, which is Donald Trump, which is Greg Abbott. That's the boss's representative in government. There's no denying it. And if you try to argue otherwise, I mean, you look like a fool. But when one union,
I mean, look who was at the inauguration, right?
Movement, right. But when one union breaks with the rest of the labor movement, it makes the labor movement weaker. And if we're not together as a labor movement, I mean, we talk about taking on Amazon. We need SEIU to take on Amazon Health. We need UFCW, as broken as they are, to take on the grocery side of Amazon.
Right.
We're not going to take on this behemoth alone, and we're out here siding with Greg Abbott against, TSEU, which is CWA's Public Employees Union in Texas. We're siding against the academic workers that Greg Abbott is actively attacking, and we're making the labor movement weaker. And so, I mean, I'm disappointed in the union.
Heartland Teamster. I want to ask you a question on this, because I mean, I'm very, very sympathetic to that, but you being in the Heartland, me being in Alabama, us broadcasting all across the South, I mean, there just as a matter of fact, there are lots of conservative working people and union members. And I was in a meeting the other day with a worker at Toyota in Huntsville, who said that he supports the UAW and he wants to organize, but he said that he feels that the UAW being so political hurts the campaign, or being quote unquote so political, which I don't even perceive the UAW as quote unquote so political. I mean, you look at their social media feeds, you look at their press releases, I mean, very, very little actually as a percentage of it is political, quote unquote, or partisan. It's all about workers. It's all about the campaigns, stuff like that, or individual pieces of legislation. So, my thought was, I think that's kind of cope. I think that there are people who are just who are scared, rightly, of potentially organizing and the boss and the boss's power over them, but they're reaching for maybe more culturally acceptable reasons to back out of a campaign. And a culturally acceptable reason to not support a union in Alabama is because you don't like Kamala Harris. That's kind of how I feel about it, but I don't know. I've been trying to ask people who have like shop floor experience and are constantly talking to workers about this. I mean, is there like a colorable argument that by, some, especially if it's token, talking to Republicans, maybe you pacify some sector of the Republican or conservative membership in a way that might be able to make it easier for them to unite with the rest of the membership on actual union campaigns? Or, I don't... What do you make of that?
Well, I think the big issue is that we don't talk about broader politics outside of labor politics. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Labor politics happens alongside the national politics, the state politics. And I think we do a poor job on the shop floor and as far as leadership is concerned when it comes to educating members about politics, right? So you see a lot of unions just in lockstep with the Democrats. Oh, we're going to support Kamala Harris. Oh, we're going to support Joe Biden because he said some nice things and went to a UAW picket line once, right? I think that I'm a big lefty, and what I do on the shop floor is I'm out and loud about my left-wing politics, right? And this made, some of the more conservative guys uncomfortable, right? And there's one guy I think about, he was writing, Trump in the dust on the trucks, like on the shop. And I was like, listen, man, you can't do that. And, Trump sucks, and this is why Trump sucks. And he's anti-worker, and he's stiffed people as a businessman, and stiffed unions as a businessman. He's, this, that, the other. And he was like, actively was like, hey, I don't like that guy. He's a lefty. And then there came a time where it was between me as a shop steward and a shop steward that had burned him in the past. And he chose me, and I went in there and I chewed management, a new hole. And he was like, wow, this lefty went in the office with me and absolutely excoriated management. And he and I have been close ever since.
Right.
And I think that's what I think we don't shy away from left politics. We don't shy away from labor politics. We don't shy away from building the identity. You need to identify with the working class. I don't care if you're a truck driver and you make $150,000 a year, and you've got the house and the boat and the and all of that. You are still closer to homeless than you are Jeff Bezos. Okay, and you need to carry it like that. But what I do is I'm proud about being left, about being pro-worker, about my working class identity and what that means for my politics. But when the conservative members, are in the office or on the shop floor, I'm a bulldog for them because they're my brothers and sisters, regardless of their politics. And I think that's how we carry it. But I think leadership also needs to not just support every Democrat because they're a Democrat, right? This is how we got into this Sean O'Brien situation, right? There needs to be. I was excited that we didn't endorse a candidate for president.
Yeah,
and that turned out being a move towards the Republicans, which I disagree with. But initially,
rather than a move towards like genuinely independent pro-labor politics. It was a
what was that guy? What was that guy that ran in Iowa or something like that? He was a union member, and he almost won just running as an independent.
Osborne.
I can't remember.
You mean Nebraska?
Yeah,
right,
Osborne.
Dan Osborne.
Nebraska. Sorry, Iowans. I did not mean to compare you to Nebraska. Yeah, but like, why isn't Sean O'Brien having that guy on the Bad Ideas podcast?
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Yeah,
surely he
you know
will.
What I'm saying? Why is he having Vivek Ramaswamy?
Yeah. It's crazy. I had thought that the Teamsters endorsed him in his last run, but I don't know. I'm not seeing it right now. I just Googled it. But surely, maybe you can write in, say, I'm a Teamster. I want you to have Dan Osborne on, and maybe he will. Surely he would, especially because he's got this whole, I don't know. It would be embarrassing if he doesn't.
Well, I know a lot of his people are on social media, right? And so instead of just some random guy, if you are like a big pro Sean O'Brien guy and you're listening to this and you're saying, hey, Sean, you're catching flack, it would be a good idea. Please, anybody who's pro Sean O'Brien who has his ear, get this in his ear that he needs to be actually pushing independent labor candidates and not going with these, dude, leave Josh Hawley. If you want to go and bro out with Josh Hawley, that's fine. But that guy is not even a co-sponsor on the 2026 Railway Safety Act. Okay,
he's not.
So if no, I don't think so. And again, if anybody knows better, please correct me. But no, he's not. It's Ohio Republicans. It's Fetterman. It's Tammy Duckworth. But I don't think Josh Hawley is on there. But I'm so disappointed in Sean O'Brien. He needs to stop showing up at DHS hearings with Mark Wayne Mullen. He needs to stop supporting these guys that actively want to see unions dismantled in this country. And he needs to show solidarity with the rest of the labor movement. It's not Teamsters versus everybody. Right. It's working class versus working ruling people. Class.
Yeah,
exactly. That is what it is. Working class versus ruling class, and that's how we need to carry it.
Teamster.
I will ask you guys one question, and you can respond to this, and I'll hop off the line. But we are better off with Sean O'Brien than we were with Hoffa Jr. But we are not where we need to be, and constantly we are in this. When I critique Sean O'Brien, TDU types will say, "Well, he's better than Hoffa. He's better than Hoffa Jr." And it's like, yeah, I agree with that, right? But we can't. We need to not focus on where we could be. We need to focus on where we need to be. And we need to stop using that as an excuse as to where we are. And we need to push our leadership to be better. So I don't know if you guys have maybe a response to that argument, or I'm sure we heard that during the UPS contract campaign. Well, we're so much better off than where we would be. Yeah, but we're not where we need to be. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate the call.
Sir.
Yep, enjoyed it. Yeah, and we'll be wrapping up and going into overtime here in just a moment. But I'll say, I agree with you. The only reason that I do feel somewhat compelled to just mention that is that I do think that there are people out there who are either not willing to recognize that, or they think that is so inconsequential as to not be worth mentioning. And I do think it's worth mentioning that, as a preface to criticism of Sean O'Brien, that he is better than the Teamsters leadership that we've had before as it relates to organizing workers. It seems to me, right? I'm not a Teamster, but it seems like you agree with that. And so, I think that, but I think that if everybody in the room, in whatever room you're talking to, agrees with that, Sean O'Brien's better than Hoffa Jr., then once we get agreement on that, if people continually hammer that point in response to in response to criticisms or critiques or recommendations for making the union better, then I do think that can start to get disingenuous.
Absolutely.
and sort of
it's the same people who,
irrelevant.
if you criticize a Democrat, say, "Oh,
Yeah.
well, you could have had a Republican,"
Right.
or vice versa, right?
Yeah, it's important to recognize, I think, but if you can't move beyond that once you get recognition, then it becomes disingenuous and not valuable. So appreciate the call. I enjoyed it. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number if anybody else wants to call in. 844-899-8857. We're about to go into the second half of the program. We got a bunch of stuff to talk about. Really excited to have this conversation with some IFPTE folks from the Corps of Engineers, my alma mater, you might say. So yeah, TVLR.fm is the website. And if you don't follow us online, we'll see you next week. We're off the radio. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. We're going to take a break. We will be right back.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, and now breaking into Yankee territory. More on that in just a moment. We're coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley in the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also leave us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact. That's right, folks. We are now on the radio on the historic progressive talk radio station WCPT in Chicago, Illinois, and KTNF in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Really excited to be talking to y'all up there. We have a whole big thing that we do. We do 3 hours of radio every week, but we're only going to be giving y'all 1 hour of it because, the rest of it is kind of specific to the South, but we talk about a lot of national issues. We're a union talk radio program, and so we talk about lots of national and sometimes even international workers' issues. We got some of that for you today. So excited, so thankful to WCPT and KTNF for their running our program, and really excited to be talking to you. It's it's a big moment for us. We have been on the air now for 6 years. We started and are still on a conservative station in Huntsville, Alabama, the conservative station that Sean Hannity actually started on. So it's very fun being some left-wing unionists on conservative talk radio. We're on a second conservative talk radio station in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Then we're also on a Black News and Soul station in Muscle Shoals. We're on a community radio station in New Orleans and a sports station in Montgomery. So with our expansion into Minnesota and Illinois, we are now on 7 stations in 5 states. And this started as 2 unionists in Alabama who completely volunteered all of their time and who had terrible audio video production quality to now having 6 people participating in the project, having a national syndicated audience, more than a dozen union sponsors, local and international, and guests from all over the world. We've talked to people from Bolivia to Argentina to Canada to Britain, Africa. So lots of growth, and really excited to be talking to y'all today. Both of us are unionists, myself and Adam Keller. I'm president of the Labor Council in North Alabama. I'm actually the youngest Labor Federation president in the country. And then Adam Keller is, Adam, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell the people who are not familiar with us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a pleasure to be on the air in Minneapolis and Chicago, 2 cities with great labor movements, great traditions of labor struggle. We love our Yankee brothers and sisters who have allowed us to be on their airwaves and really appreciate that. So I joined the Valley Labor Report back in 2021, about a year into the project. Our brother from the Machinist, David Story, started this thing alongside Jacob here. And when David wanted to take a step back, I stepped in, and that was right in time for Strike Fest, where we organized a big event to support the coal miners when they were on strike. UMWA had a big, long, grueling strike against Warrior Met Coal here in 2021. The Amazon campaign was kicking off, and so it was a time of resurgence for labor in Alabama and in the South, and I think we, hit this at the right time. Since then, we have grown this project. We've, to the radio stations you mentioned, we've grown online. We're available pretty much anywhere you can find anything. We're now a nationally syndicated program, which is pretty wild to think about. This is a very grassroots operation, something we've done on the side as a passion project, because we really do believe that working people deserve media. Right, because bosses have media. You can tune in to corporate media or to the extreme far right talking heads that dominate talk radio. You can find that anywhere, especially in the South. That's something that we really, really are passionate about, was getting on commercial radio, even conservative radio. Because if we did this as an online-only project, we recognize we would limit who would actually hear it. And there's some utility in preaching to the choir. Sometimes that is important, but sometimes you got to reach other folks. And so that's why we hustle to raise money and have union sponsors and sell advertisements and do all that stuff, so we can afford to have these operations and to reach as many people as possible, because working class people need to hear a message of solidarity, of collective action, of people power, of coming together across racial and gender and religious divisions, and really seizing the power that we have when we work together. That's what this show is all about. That's what we try to amplify week in and week out, stories of workers organizing, stories of workers coming together, beating the boss, taking on politicians, winning better policies. So whether it's, on the political legislative front, or in the workplace, organizing, building power, or broadly in the community, that's what we try to amplify. We've had a really, really amazing array of guests on this show. It's one of my favorite things about this project is that we are able to talk to so many cool people, both the guests that we line up and that we're able to secure. And we've had some, everyone from rank and file workers across the world to, big names, big leaders, big academics, big reporters, folks with followings. And, it's been really cool to talk to those folks, but also just rank and file listeners from across the country or across the world who give us a call and tune in. That's really amazing. I've been, in the labor movement for over a dozen years now. I got my start as a high school history teacher, and I started in 2012 when, of course, the Chicago Teachers Union went on their big strike, and that was like a light bulb moment for me. I was already interested in progressive left politics, but I wasn't really sure what to do with it. But as a young teacher who recognized a lot of injustice, both facing my students, but also my coworkers and our community, when I saw that strike in Chicago, it was really a light bulb moment for me. It showed me that we needed to organize in the workplace. We needed to build coalitions in the community, and that was the way we could try to make things better. And so that set me off on a journey to becoming an activist and becoming an organizer. And, taking a staff job, getting fired from the staff job, starting over in the blue collar union world, sent me on my whole journey. So I have been very inspired and, informed by experiences in Chicago. And I've been lucky enough to visit Chicago a couple times for Labor Notes. Looking forward to being back this summer for Labor Notes. And I even had a chance to visit Minneapolis last year. And get to meet some folks from the labor movement and the racial justice movements there. So it's kind of a full circle moment to be on the air in Chicago for me, since it played such a role in my journey in politics and organizing. And that's why we do what we do. We think working people deserve better, especially down here in the South, because for those of you who aren't in the South, you need to know that we're holding back the whole country. The way this region, the way the South is underdeveloped and exploited, the way companies come down here to treat us worse and pay us less. Economic Policy Institute talks about the Southern Economic Development Model. They put out a whole series of reports rooted in racism. Highly recommend you check it out. But, more commonly, folks would just say, well, Alabama's kind of like the last stop to Mexico, right? Companies will leave states like Illinois or Minnesota to come down to a place like Alabama to escape union power, to pay less, to treat us worse, to escape regulations. They know most of the politicians down south are on their side. They know, we'll probably give them tax incentives to come down here. They'll probably pay less tax rates than their workers will. And so the Southern economic model is holding back the entire country. As long as the South is this bastion of reactionary bigotry and anti-union sentiment, it is a a restraint on working class people across this country and ultimately across the world. So it's really, really important that we organize in the South. And I appreciate all the folks, in places like Chicago and Minneapolis who recognize that we do have to organize in the South. You cannot treat the South as this lost cause that's just forever gone and never going to get better, because that is a problem for everyone to wrestle with, not just folks like us who are stuck here.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I was talking to some union members the other day about a campaign that did not win ultimately in Alabama. Pro-union workers lost the union election, and it was at a company that has union locations up north, and the company violated the neutrality agreement in the contracts that they had with the unions up north. And the unions up north, the union locals refused to file grievances to enforce that contract because what I was told is that they felt like, well, they're down south. They're not part of the union. Why should I waste my political capital with the company to fight for people who don't even want a union, quote unquote, even though the only reason that they voted against the union was because of the vicious anti-union campaign that the company ran. It's so self-defeating because if the companies are able to ship jobs to the South for lower wages and with less protections, it's not going to be good for workers up north. What's good for everybody would be that everybody organizes. And so that's what we're trying to lift up and empower here in the South. And we want to do the same thing up there where we're broadcasting now. So if you're in Minneapolis, you're in Chicago, there's some local labor issues that are going on, please call in 844-899-TVLR. You can leave us a voicemail at any time. You can leave us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact, and we can arrange a longer interview if that's necessary. But we'd love to cover some of those local issues. Speaking of some of those local issues, we have on the line now Colin Smalley, president of IFPTE Local 777 at the Corps of Engineers in Chicago, and Monica Coniglio, the vice president of IFPTE Local 98 in New York City, to talk about some of the things that the Corps of Engineers is doing in New York that they think the Corps of Engineers might start trying to do in Chicago and other places across the country. We'll be talking about some other things too. But Colin, Monica, welcome to the Valley Labor Report. Thanks for taking the time. I don't know if they're muted. I could not hear them. Okay.
Can you hear us now?
Yes. All right. Colin, Monica, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, like I said, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, you might call it my alma mater. I worked there for the better part of a decade. They're making some really big changes in the New York district, and that could be coming to Chicago. Monica, this is happening to your local. Can you talk to us about what's going on?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm Monica Coniglio, Vice President of IFPT Local 98. What happened back in February was that we were issued a memo about this relocation, but it actually didn't quite start there. It started with an executive order that was issued back in April of last year in 2025 to move federal offices from urban centers for at least cost savings. But when you read the fine print, it's really just about attempting to get at key urban areas in the country and weaken them in their downtowns. And then shortly after that, Russell Vogt released an OMB memo supporting that executive order, but that had some more specifics about the directives to have a new office space and to have the offices that receive that directive to provide those plans within 12 months of that memo. And so you fast forward to now, and February was when we got the notification publicly that this relocation was happening. And they've been moving very fast ever since. So they posted a request for lease proposal on sam.gov on the evening of March 18th. And that is now due in April 20th, which lines up perfectly with that OMB memo. So that kind of shows where it came from. But after reading through the requirements, the two details that were particularly concerning for our employees where the location for the New York district is now being limited to just New Jersey. So that's Hoboken, Jersey City, and Newark, which there's a lot to unpack there. So I'll I'll hold off on digging into that just yet. But we are concerned about retention because moving it outside of just the center of where all of our employees live is going to affect retention. And then the other very, very big concern is that the RLP's requirement for USACE, NAN, and NAD, so they're also trying to consolidate our offices that are at Fort Hamilton and at 26 Federal Plaza into just one place. But they are limiting that to only consider privately owned lease space, meaning USACE will pay millions of dollars annually to a private entity. Because right now, our current offices are under a GSA lease at 26 Federal Plaza. So technically that like stays within the government infrastructure, whereas now it's going to switch and go specifically to a private entity. But yeah,
and
there's a lot going on.
They're not even allowing the contracting officers or whoever is responsible for implementing this lease to consider federal government property.
Nope. That is off the table.
And they're already in federal property. There's
Right.
no problem with the property they're in. They have plenty of space. They have costs that they've incurred to move into that location. And that would just be wasted if they leave.
Wow. So, so Monica, so there are two things, and I want to tease them apart one by one. The one is that the argument about maybe we can do this more cheaply if we consolidate two offices and move them to a third place where neither of the offices currently are and where basically none of the workers live. Maybe we can save some money there. And then the second, and so you contest that, the IFPTE, the union at the Corps of Engineers in those districts, contests that assertion. And so I want to get to that. And then also, then there's the second order thing, which is that this would be bad for workers. Kind of whatever the budgetary fact of the matter is, this is going to really hurt workers. So let's go with the line item argument first. They say this is going to save money. How is it that they get to that assertion? Why do they say it'll save money, and why are they wrong?
I feel like maybe I could let Colin explain a little bit more on that. But just for one example, where this has been proven wrong with like the same assertion of saving money is when the administration relocated the headquarters of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, from Washington, D.C. to Alexandria, Virginia. It's estimated that HUD's costs rose by an estimated 40%. So it's already shown to be not a cost savings measure. We have also brought this to the attention of various members of Congress, and they also are concerned that this is not very clear. And I guess the reason why it's very hard to see what their reasoning is because the market research is something that's being kept from everyone from seeing. They are saying that it's sensitive information and that we don't have access to that. And we have submitted a FOIA and RFIs to request that information, but we won't be seeing it until after the RLP due date of 4/20. We were promised it by 4/22. So it's hard to say if we're not allowed to see the data.
Colin, did you have anything else on the budget argument?
Well, I think part of it is that, they're speculating that there's going to be cheaper costs with a private landlord. But I think, first of all, you can look at the fact that Monica made earlier that they're currently in government space, which does not need to account for profit, right? It's just the expenses. And then if you add a private landlord to the situation, now you're injecting profit into the equation. And I don't see how that saves money. But even looking at the facts that we do have, we know that the current space that these offices are in, when a big lease is done like that for a federal agency, they will take the costs of the move and of any renovations, new cubicles, whatever it is, and they will spread that over the course of the entire lease. right? And so there's still costs that the government is on the hook for that are going to have to be paid, even if the Corps leaves their current facilities. And so, I think people can imagine this like if you're renting an apartment and you want to leave, let's say you need to move before the end of your lease, your landlord's still going to expect the rent for the rest of that lease, right? And so best case scenario, you can work out some kind of buyout situation or arrange for a new tenant to take over the lease or something. But all of that is unnecessary. They could just keep working until their lease expires. They could recognize the fact that government is not supposed to be about profit. It's supposed to be about public service. It's supposed to be about being where the people need them to be. And so when you think about a place like New York City that is one of the economic centers of the entire global economy, why would you not have an important government service there?
Right.
It's been there for over 100 years. In the article that our international president was quoted in this week, he pointed that out, that that the Army Corps of Engineers has had a presence in New York City for over 100 years and has been doing incredible work, whether that's in disasters or anything else. And so we're arguing that should continue and that all of this move is unnecessary.
Yeah, and so you're starting to move into kind of the effect that it'll have on the workers. And so just to recap the budget argument, they make these assertions that it'll be cheaper. They're not really showing their homework, and there are lots of reasons to believe that this will actually be more expensive for the government to consolidate 2 offices into a third different office where none of the people currently live. And so, you started talking about how it would kind of affect the mission and how it'll affect the workers. And that really seems so intuitive to me. The Corps of Engineers has to interface, particularly in New York, with lots of other government agencies. And so if you've got them all in one building or kind of walking distance from one another, then it's easier to, that's literally the whole argument for working in the office, right? Is that you can be there to interface with people in person rather than calling or emailing. And so now, they're completely contradicting the whole thing, and it's going to make the Corps of Engineers workers their job more difficult. And Monica, in your issue brief that you sent me, you talked about how lots of employees at the New York office would consider leaving because, they would have to move or they would have to transit some, ridiculous amount of time to get to a New Jersey office, right? Can you talk a little bit more about how this would affect workers if they made this move?
Sure. Yeah. And I just wanted to touch upon something you had just mentioned, which is our walking distance to critical officials and agencies. And we're close to Port Authority, which is in World Trade Center, New York State offices, NYPD, New York City government offices. So by moving us away from those areas, it's going to impact our collaboration with those stakeholders. And for instance, when we had COVID, we had to set up tents in Central Park as a backup because of the hospital beds there was a shortage of in the hospitals. So being able to do that was an advantage to be close to Central Park. Moving us to as far as Newark, which is over 2 rivers away from Manhattan, is not going to be productive. And then, so to the point of attrition and retention, it's a big issue because we have a lot of different employees that are located in New York. So we've got like way up north, which is Westchester, even like the Bronx. And then we've got far out east, which is Long Island employees. And then we've got out west, we've got Connecticut, New Jersey, and even some people in Pennsylvania. So like really just a big net cast around that geographical range. What's in the center is Manhattan. So the second you move that away, you make it very difficult for many of those people to get to work. And even for some people would assume, oh, New Jersey, maybe it's easier for certain people and they're prioritizing part of the workforce. It's not really even the case, because the transportation to the office right now, you have buses, you have trains, you have a lot of different options to get into New York City. That's just the way that it's built. But for New Jersey, it's very limited. You have mostly just train options. And so now you have people incurring higher costs. And there's really been no actual discussion about whether parking is there's going to be parking provided. So maybe that is something that would come down the line. We hope that it would, if this really does go through, but it's just not the best alternative. So we did take a survey after we had found out initially that there was a possibility of this move and that it was going to possibly be considering New Jersey. So when we knew that there was a town hall coming up, I got a member-wide meeting organized, and I said okay, does anybody know how to set up a survey and have good ideas for questions for us to ask? And I pulled together a team of 4 or 5 people, and we put together a survey. And the day that we sent it out, the day of the town hall, we got 130 responses, and that covers a good substantial amount of the workforce. So we have about 385 people. But that actually might even cast out more when you include NAD. That's specifically NAN. And so when we put that survey out, it was very apparent that if we were to leave from 26 Federal Plaza, about half the participants had said that they would just quit because it's just an unsustainable commute, because we're talking 2+ hours each way.
Ugh.
And it's just not maybe some parts of the country, because I think we've spoken before, Jacob, and people do that. And
2 hours is pretty.
Around here, that's not common.
Yeah, 2 hours is pretty extreme, even where we're from. We're a little bit out in the sticks, and so there's Huntsville is really kind of the magnet for jobs, and really you start to get kind of on the outer limit of what people are willing to do when you hit 1 hour each way. I think I might know. I could count on one hand the number of people that I know who commute more than an hour each way. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing I would mention is you mentioned parking, Monica, but that assumes that your workforce all has vehicles. I live in Chicago. I don't even own a car. And so if they were to move our office out to the suburbs somewhere, I would have to look at, am I buying a car, or am I doing, like you were talking about, doing a 2-hour, transit shuffle where, and it may be, multiple modes where you're taking a bus to a different train or a train to a different train. And I agree with you. And the listeners here in Chicago will know our system's set up that way too, right? It's this hub and spoke model where everything, especially the further out you go, the more that any transit or even frankly the interstates are all pointed toward the central business district. That's the way city planning has worked in the United States for over a century.
And Colin, they're starting in New York, but the one reason that it's relevant for people in Chicago, particularly folks who work at the Corps of Engineers in Chicago, is that the Corps of Engineers has identified other quote unquote high cost cities as places to implement this same agenda, including specifically Chicago, right?
Correct. And San Francisco and Los Angeles. So I'll leave the listener to draw the conclusions about what those 4 cities have in common. But,
well, that starts to go to, the question of why are they really doing this, right? They're saying it's for cost savings. There's reason for the listener to be dubious of that assertion. And so if not cost, then what?
Well, what I was implying there is that it's a political move, right? We've also seen at the Army Corps of Engineers certain projects being, quote unquote, administratively paused, but only in blue states. So, an example of something here close to home is an invasive species barrier where there's giant carp that are coming up from the Mississippi River, and we have a barrier that we operate, and we're building another one. And this is to protect the Great Lakes from these carp coming in, and they will eat, I mean, literally everything. It will destroy the Great Lakes fishery and all the economic and tourism economy that's based on that. And so it's this critical, nationally important, internationally important work that we're doing. And even President Trump put out a True Social post the other day about how critical it was to stop these carp. And yet the political appointee that runs the Army Corps of Engineers is not releasing the money to get the work done. The contractors are ready to work. They're going to have to stop work soon, and they're more concerned, it would appear, about political retribution. And I think there was a court case here in Chicago recently as well about the Chicago Transit Authority has a couple of very large capital improvement projects where they're extending one of our biggest train lines and refurbishing the other side of that line. And these are multi-billion-dollar projects. And in Chicago and New York City, and only in those two places, the Federal Transit Administration stopped and is withholding money for these major capital projects, these grants that were already given, but they're withholding the money. And so in court, the judge actually ruled for the Chicago Transit Authority, in part because of the record that they didn't do this to anyone else. It was just Chicago and New York City. So this is all fitting into, like Monica said, they're withholding a lot of information from us. They're trying to be clever about how they do this, that they have some kind of argument that sounds good on its face. But I think that, anybody, the American people, but certainly our unions can look and see the patterns that are emerging. And I think the fact that these, maybe they use the word urban, maybe they use, high rent as a proxy, but what they're really talking about is, democratic leaning urban centers.
Right. And so there's at least some reason to suspect that this move is just kind of to punish these democratic leading urban centers by, taking away jobs, taking away, money for the downtown area and things like that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just so it's so insane. And so, the union's fighting back against this. Monica, can you talk about some of the ways that y'all are fighting back and maybe how other Corps of Engineers employees can get in on this?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess we'll start with just saying, like, one of the first things I mentioned before was just having a member-wide meeting and getting everyone together and seeing where people are. I mean, it became very obvious after our first town hall that there was a shift in dynamic between the union and all employees. And like the best way that I could put it is that it went from like this us versus them tension to just like everyone just saying very much like on the same page, we are unhappy with this move. And is there anyone that like cares or sees us? Do our lives matter in this decision of this move? And it just, that element felt missing, and it's something that has like brought a lot of us together. So it became a very unique moment to see that, okay, we're all on the same page. And it's a very big shift from last year where there was just a lot of different things happening. And now we're kind of centered on this one issue. So it's helped a lot as far as organizing goes, because I had been a part of my union since I joined the government 4 years ago, but I was not as involved in the union as I was last year and this year. And last year it was very tough to get around one issue, but having this has made things a lot clearer to get organized. So we've started with that survey, and then we've also tapped into the Federal Unionist Network, to the fund, to help us figure out the best way to amp up our recruitment. So we're still in the process of doing that. Thank you to Chris Doles for getting us organized and like really tapping into what people can contribute to this movement. And the other very big thing is congressional outreach. Outside of the town hall, I really wasn't sure like where to plug in. I'm still kind of learning the ropes. But I started to reach out to some of my people in my network with the Federal Unionist Network, the fund, and I asked my friend that was with NASA what had happened during their move. And it was very devastating early last year. And I was able to take a lot of notes from her and understand what the lessons learned were there. And I realized how tight of a timeline we were on. And I made sure to just try to figure out what our plan was. And one of the first things was congressional outreach and learning how to navigate that. And what was suggested through my NASA contact was to work with IFPT, because they also, I guess NASA has an IFPT local, and to reach out to the international to facilitate scheduling meetings with members of Congress. And that is our legal right to make our members' views known to Congress. It's been a very unique moment for us to be filling this role, especially because right now our management has been issued a gag order by Pete Hegseth back in October, November. So they've just not been able to have their normal meetings with Congress themselves. So we've tried to communicate any concerns that employees have through our own means. And I think that the IFPT International has been really great with helping us to make those connections and have those emails to those staffers that we could talk and make sure that we are communicating clear and concise asks in those meetings. And that actually was what led to the congressional letter that was signed by various members of Congress, including both senators of New York. And they were helping to support us in trying to understand a lot of like the missing information with the market research and where the cost savings is. And we also have been, we've also had them, they reached out to the assistant secretary, the congressional letter reached out to the assistant secretary and to GSA. And in those letters, they requested, why were the offices and the relevant congressional committees not notified of this proposed NAN relocation? The second ask was, did the Department of the Army comply with the notice waiting period and reporting requirements under federal law 10 USC 2662? And if so, please provide all the past notices and reports and commit to providing all future notifications. And lastly, prior to issuing the RLP, did the Department of Army conduct a thorough assessment or study to account for all the benefits and costs, including staff retention and potential departures of moving NAN out of 26 Federal Plaza, a federally owned building? So that's out there, and they have asked to have a response by no later than April 17th. So we're in a bit of a waiting pattern with a few things. But yeah, it's a bit challenging because there's a lot of different angles that we are trying to address this from, organizing within, reaching out to Congress, being on this podcast. We're really just trying to get the word out and make it known that this issue is not specific necessarily to New York. As we see it, especially as like Colin has said that Chicago may be next, New York has become like this guinea pig for like, how do we make this impossible thing, just push it through? And I say it's impossible because in the past, the Army Corps is like typically very like bipartisan, and usually management's able to like work through these things on their own and say, okay, this isn't in the best interest, but there's just no conversation between them. And so we're trying to figure out how we communicate what these concerns are and get ahead of this particular RLP date. But yeah, I mean, we're figuring out day by day.
We're talking to Monica Coniglio, Vice President of IFPTE Local 98 at the Corps of Engineers in New York, and Colin Smalley, President of IFPTE Local 777 in Chicago, Illinois, about an attempt by the Corps of Engineers to move their district offices out of quote-unquote high-cost urban centers and into the suburbs. Does not seem like it's a good thing. I really appreciate y'all talking to us about this issue. Sticking to federal union issues, the FLRA, the Federal Labor Relations Authority, which is the federal sector equivalent of the National Labor Relations Board, they adjudicate disputes over the federal sector labor law between management and employees, as it relates to representation and things like this. And Colin, this is a drum that you've been banging on for a while, even before Trump took office, really, is the FLRA just continues to be very, very slow. Why is that, and what effect does that have on federal workers?
Yeah, thanks, Jake. To back up a little bit, so even through all of the Biden administration, there has been no what's called general counsel of the FLRA. And this is a position that is designed to, when a union or an agency files an unfair labor practice charge, they are required to they're the only person, whoever's in that position is the only person that can actually keep that process going beyond sort of the initial investigation. So if it's going to actually be prosecuted, if it's going to actually be resolved, you have to have a general counsel. And we're now I know it's over 5 years. It may even be almost 8 years that we haven't had a general counsel at the FLRA. And so this is a very long-standing problem. And what has exacerbated that is that the FLRA currently is making some really kind of bizarre choices in how they're processing things. Because I was saying that there's a problem with the final resolution of a lot of these activities because there's no general counsel. But there are appointed members. It's now at a full strength of 3 individuals on the board. The President Trump did, he fired one of the sitting members in what she believed was an illegal action, and she fought that in court. The Supreme Court did not, back her up on that. And then President Trump nominated a person of his choice to fill that seat, that vacancy. And so we have a full board, but they are refusing to process anything at any level from any agency that is involved with this executive order, or I guess there's 2 executive orders now that President Trump has issued that claim to make whole departments, whole agencies excluded from the Federal Labor Relations law, the statute, and what that would mean is that we would lose our collective bargaining rights. And so if that were true, then the FLRA would have no jurisdiction to hear any of our cases. However, that said, federal court has issued what they call an injunction, which says that the executive order is unlawful as to a number of unions, including IFPTE. There was a similar one that applied to some other unions that is currently, the pause is on pause by an appeals court. So there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of moving parts. But what we've been saying, and what I've been, as you say, I've been beating this drum here, is that when there is a court order that says the executive order is illegal, you employees have your normal rights, you have your normal contract, then they should honor that, just as a matter of law. And so my local has 8 unfair labor practice charges that are all in that category of just, being ignored. I have a representation petition, which is an action where you go to the FLRA to get either an initial vote. There's a group of workers in Portland, Oregon, with IFPT Local 97, one of our sister locals, who has collected enough cards to get a vote on whether or not they have a union, whether or not they have union recognition. And the FLRA is ignoring them too. And so it really doesn't seem to matter how important the situation is. It doesn't seem to matter how, where in the country they are. It doesn't seem to matter the union or the agency or what other even federal courts are saying. The FLRA is just blanketly ignoring all of these actions. And of course, what that leads to is generally it leads to agencies that might see that they have an opportunity to do whatever they want, create whatever damage they're going to inflict, and then the consequences, if they ever arrive, will be so far down the road that it may be very hard to to get back to the way things were. And so I think that's part of the overall pattern that we're seeing here. There have also been some other structural things that the administration has been doing with the FLRA to weaken it, or certainly to weaken it as it pertains to workers. And so one of those is that when in the federal sector, when workers made it known that they wanted an election because they wanted to be represented by a union and to bargain collectively, that would be handled at a regional office. At one time, there were 8 regional offices. More recently, there's been 5. They just closed the Chicago regional office. So there is currently not a single Federal Labor Relations Authority office in the Central Time Zone.
Wow.
They're down to 4 offices. So my cases now get forwarded to Denver, Colorado, from the Chicago bargaining unit. And so they're closing offices. They laid off their administrative law judges and said that they're not going to have administrative law judges anymore. And then they said that elections, when workers have shown that they have enough interest for an election, are now going to be run by the Federal Labor Relations Authority itself. The actual politically appointed members in Washington, D.C. are going to run all the elections nationwide, taking that role away from the regional offices that are better able to work with the agencies. So it's hard for me to see how this could possibly result in anything other than more delays and more difficulty in winning union elections. Anybody who's been through that kind of organizing process knows that building momentum is an important part of that process. And so, if we're now adding extra levels of formality, extra levels of distance, extra levels of bureaucracy and red tape, it's I can't see it having any effect other than hurting workers who have just tried to use their democratic voice in the workplace.
Yeah, seems bad. lots of things for federal workers to be concerned about, and also then by everybody else. It's easiest for the Trump administration to come after federal workers, and then the federal government, for good and for bad, is often something of a model employer for the private sector. And so y'all are involved in fighting back against some of these anti-worker changes. How can other federal workers join you in the fight, defend their jobs, and defend their work?
So I guess I would start, and then I'll toss it over to Monica. I would start by turning to your fellow workers, right? Have those conversations one-on-one with the people you work with. Talk about how you can make things better. Talk about what kind of actions you can take when you see something that is wrong, that's going on in your workplace, whether that's something about your own working conditions, or since we're all public servants, the public we serve, our communities. People sometimes forget that federal workers are also members of their own communities. We're also taxpayers. We're also, engaged and invested in the public services that our agencies provide. And so I think that to the extent that we can turn towards each other, we can have that hope of turning things around in a better day. And so that's where I'm going to start. Monica, what have you got?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to add on to that because I think that this is the time to start forming coalitions with local and state stakeholders and group around the issue of how attacks on federal workers have already really made it difficult for local communities. Federal workers not only have to get together, but they need to start getting together with those communities and that have been materially and directly affected by bad federal policies. The USPS is running out of money. TSA suffered the longest shutdown until recently. FEMA is still suffering it. And why? It's because Trump is trying to, make it very difficult for millions of voters, including married women with the SAVE Act. The loss of public services and a worsening economic situation is unfortunately becoming more and more of an unavoidable issue for communities every day. And people are angry, and we need to organize everyone not just to stop this administration's disastrous policies, but remind them that hope for this country comes from the bottom up and that they have the power no matter the situation. And I mean, the way that I had mentioned before that I've been able to tap into that is through the Federal Unionist Network and talking to other federal agencies through that network and be able to have lessons learned. And from like what we're putting together, what we've done so far, being able to share that and pass it to somebody else that is facing a relocation. Because this, I mean, just the relocation is the focus of what we were talking about with this for Army Corps, but it is happening to so many agencies. And I've reached out to various networks and been trying to compare notes with them. And I think that we just need to start getting around this issue and create a campaign around it. And it's going to take time, but they are moving fast. So that's what we're up against.
Monica Coniglio is the vice president of IFPTE Local 98 in New York, and Colin Smalley is the president of IFPTE Local 777 in Chicago, Illinois. Both of them Corps of Engineer employees, speaking in their personal capacity, obviously, and in their capacity as union representatives. Colin Smalley and Monica Coniglio, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us. And a quick congratulations to all the IFPTE siblings and other union siblings that have had a hand in the successful Artemis launch.
Yes.
Really exciting times.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Colin, Monica, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857 if you would like to call in. And if you're listening to us when we're not live, you can leave us a voicemail at any time. You can also leave us a written comment at tvlr.fm/contact. We've got, I wanted to spend some more time on this budget that Trump put out last week. He called for a 10% or a 44% increase in the defense budget, increasing it to $1.5 trillion. Just an insane, totally indefensible number. And it's, it's just crazy. And then that's on top of, he wants that to be a continuing expense for people. $1.5 trillion every year. And that's on top of the $200 billion that he wants as a one-time expense for his war in Iran. And let's go through a few of these things that he wants to cut to pay for his $1.5 trillion defense budget. He wants to cut the EPA budget by half. He wants to cut $10.7 billion from housing programs. He wants to cut $8.5 billion from K-12 education programs. He wants to cut $15 billion from clean energy programs, $2.5 billion from clean drinking water programs, $1.6 billion for youth job training, $3.5 billion from the Department of Labor, $5 billion from the National Institutes of Health. He wants to eliminate the low-income home energy assistance program. It's just, just a total caricature of, they want to take money from normal working people and use it killing brown folks in the Middle East in Jacobin the Branko Marcetic says, quote, Trump has become the most over-the-top caricature of the indulgent warmongers he once pretended to despise, not someone who prioritizes endlessly bombing random countries over Americans' well-being, but someone actively and eagerly prepared to make Americans' lives worse and more expensive so he can do it with abandon. It's a project he and his team are so committed to, it seems, that they'll happily steer headfirst into political oblivion to keep it going. Let's play this clip that compares how he was talking about the issue of war and the issue of taking care of Americans on the campaign trail versus how he's talking about it today. Clip 2.
If you win in November, can you commit to prioritizing legislation to make childcare affordable? And if so, what specific piece of legislation will you advance?
Well, I would do that. Childcare is childcare. There's something, you have to have it. In this country, you have to have it. We're going to make this into an incredible country that can afford to take care of its people, and then we'll worry about the rest of the world. Let's help other people. But we're going to take care of our country first. This is about America first. We can't take care of daycare. We're a
okay,
big
hold on.
country.
Pause it for a second. We're going to want to go back
states
a little bit. So he starts in the campaign saying, well, childcare is childcare. We got to have childcare. We have to have childcare. Of course, we're going to take care of people and make sure that they can have childcare and other countries can worry about themselves. We have to take care of Americans, and, we still want to help other people, which, by the way, the Trump administration is trying to basically decimate the state's capacity to do that, eliminating U.S. aid and all these other things that actually do help other people, which we should do. But we should prioritize Americans is what he was saying, and we got to prioritize childcare. Make sure we rewind just a little bit to get to where he starts saying, where we get his comments from just a couple of days ago, because here's what he is saying about childcare now.
We can't take care of daycare. We're a big country. We have 50 states. We have all these other people. We're fighting wars. We can't take care of daycare. You got to let a state take care of daycare, and they should pay for it too. They should pay. They have to raise their taxes.
Okay, states got to have child care, and they have to raise taxes. Donald Trump, advocate of raising taxes. I mean, there's something.
I'm going to let our Alabama legislature know about this.
Yeah.
Now, they forgot about all that during this legislative session. They forgot to raise taxes to provide child care. It's funny because I've got some ideas on how we could raise those taxes, and in particular on who we could raise those taxes on. That's a great clip. We'll have to share that with all of our Alabama representatives.
Yeah, let's continue.
Should pay for it, and we could lower our taxes a little bit to them to make up. But it's not possible for us to take care of daycare, Medicaid,
not possible.
Medicare, all these individual things. They can do it on a state basis. You can't do it on a federal. We have to take care of one thing: military protection. We have to guard the country.
I mean, just totally insane. I mean, just factually wrong, right? As a matter of fact, can we take care of daycare? I mean, there are lots of estimates about how much it would cost to do the maximal policy, which is free universal child care for everybody in the country who wants it. And that would be between $60 billion and $200 billion every single year. And guess what? $60 billion and $200 billion are both less than the nearly $400 billion that he wants to raise the defense budget by. Completely, just not indefensible policies here. Unions are speaking out about it, obviously, not good for working people. The National Education Association, the largest union in the country, and also the largest teachers union, attacking it as a bad budget, which it obviously is. It's just so insane. I mean, you think about how much money or how much good that could do. That amount of money, $400 billion. I mean, like I said, $200 billion at the top of the estimates universal free childcare for everybody. $100 billion is like a median estimate for universal free college for everybody who has the aptitude for it. And then you've still got $50 billion to play around with. $50 billion, $100 billion to play around with to do things that would actually help people. And that's just from the increase in the defense budget. And by the way, the increase in the defense budget does not include a pay raise for civilian employees. So you got to think about, who is he envisioning this 44% increase in the defense budget going to? It's going to go to contractors. It's going to go to contractor CEOs, contractor shareholders. It's not going to go to working people. Just totally indefensible. Oh, and by the way, he also wants to continue funding ICE at 10 times the level that we were doing it before. Remember, they increased the ICE budget to $100 billion over 10 years, where it was only $10 billion over 10 years before that. Just just insane. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reminded of the old Tupac lyric about how they have money for war but can't feed the poor. And like, to just come right out and say it, you know?
We don't want to feed the poor, actually.
Yeah, to come right out and say, I mean, because obviously a lot of us have been making this argument for generations, right? That by prioritizing the war economy, we are really neglecting our needs of the people. All the money that is spent building means of death and destruction could be spent on infrastructure, childcare, education, climate protection, rolling back the environmental damage we've done to this planet. There's a lot of work that needs to be done and could be done. There's a lot of needs in our community. And to think how much that money could go, like how far it could go in terms of making a difference for everyday people, the jobs we could create, right? And what if we had jobs where you didn't have to sell your labor to the war machine? You know, what if you had jobs that really improved your community and improved quality of life for folks? And we could really scale up the human infrastructure that we need to have good family lives for folks, because we do need childcare. We do need education that's debt-free. We need all these things for folks. And to say that we can't do it because we're too busy fighting wars, well, there we go. There's a reason why so many of us oppose these wars on so many grounds. If you don't care about other human beings, if you don't have empathy for other human beings, don't you at least have some self-interest?
Right.
Don't you at least see that the money spent blowing up other human beings is money not spent on you, helping you and your family, right?
I mean, just from an economic perspective, I mean, think about how much better our country could be if, like you said, because definitionally, money made creating bombs, money made investing in offensive weapon systems is destructive. It is not productive labor. And it's not like we don't need a military. We do need, we need to have some sort of capacity for national defense. And so, I'm not saying anything that we should just totally eliminate the Department of Defense, but think about how much we are spending above and beyond what we need to actually genuinely defend the country, rather than going around and playing world policeman, rather than going around and toppling democratic governments in countries that we don't like. If we genuinely limited the defense budget to what we needed to defend the country, every dollar that we're spending making bombs over and above what we actually need for defense is necessarily destructive, right? You do not, once the bomb is made, it either actually decreases, the world's economic activity by virtue of the fact that it blows something up, or it doesn't do anything because it sits in some locker somewhere and gets decommissioned at a later time. And instead of doing that, instead of employing the brightest minds in the world on bomb making. We could be having them, working on new medicines. We could be having them working on infrastructure. We could be having them building buses, vehicles, trains, subways, literally anything else. And not only would you still have the economic activity from that person's wages going towards this or that job, you would have the add-on effects, the productive capacity of that the job itself creates, right? When you produce infrastructure, you allow more economic activity to happen. When you produce a bus, you allow, more people are able to get to work because of that bus. More people don't get to work because of a bomb. Right? Just think about how much better the world would be if we directed so much of our defense production to industrial production.
Yeah, I mean, and just to expand on something you hinted at, you would need less defense if you stopped attacking people.
Right, that's true.
I have found in my life that the less I attack other people, the less they attack me.
Really?
And I know that is a hot take.
So you're saying that when you stopped going around and randomly punching people, you found that in actual fact, people were less likely to punch you.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, I know geopolitics is a little different than our own personal lifestyle, but I think there is some principle to apply there. That, if you were to disengage from imperial violence across the world, if you were to disengage from overthrowing people's governments, starving people, here we are starving the island of Cuba. How does killing dialysis patients in Cuba, 90 miles away from safe medicine, how does that help me as an American?
Right.
It doesn't. It doesn't. It puts bloodshed and destruction. It puts my name on it. It puts all of our name on it because we're helping to pay for it. And it's really disturbing. And I think, whether you resonate with the moral opposition to this or the economic opposition to it, whatever floats your boat. But the bottom line is that we as working people really deserve so much better. The truth is that working people around the world, we have more in common with each other than we do with the oligarchs running most of our countries. And so it's really important, I think, that we resist calls for empire and for war and for bloodshed, and that we stand up for solidarity for all working people across borders. It's not right. It's not right what is happening in our name. And I think it's important that unions be involved and all of us be involved in speaking out.
Adam, your union is now striking the Daily Wire, right?
Yeah. So this was something that crossed my radar late this week. So I don't have just a whole ton of information about it. But there is a guy named Jonathan Majors. He is an actor, was a much more prominent actor. He's had some trouble in his life and is now reduced to doing films for the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro fame.
Had some trouble in his life, specifically was found guilty of assaulting his former girlfriend. So
yeah,
it's not like he just said something unwoke on Twitter.
Right. It's not exactly like he was unfairly canceled. I mean, he's an abuser,
a woman beater. Yeah.
And so naturally, Ben Shapiro thought that's exactly who I want to star in my film. So he's starring in some film. It's being made in South Carolina, and my siblings in IATSE have called a strike. Is my understanding, or at least that's the reporting from Deadline. The companies are trying to replace the striking crew, of course, naturally. And in a statement to Deadline, Deadline.com, the company said, quote, "We are too busy being badasses, blowing shit up, flying helicopters, and killing movie terrorists to concern ourselves with four assholes with signs on the sidewalk and their illegitimate strike." So that is the company's response to the strike. They're too busy being cool to apparently respect workers and respect workers' safety. I'm still trying to find out exactly what prompted the strike. I do know that there was like some safety concerns. I'm not sure what else has gone on. So this news just broke, later in the week. I saw a headline that Jonathan Majors fell out of a window on the movie shoot. So, clearly there are some safety concerns. And okay, so yeah, apparently there was a failure to secure a contract that would cover health and pension contributions, and then the safety kind of escalated it from there. So solidarity with IATSE. It's bad enough to have to work for these Daily Wire freaks, but then for them to not even respect basic worker dignity and contracts. Not surprised, but absolutely sending our love and support to those IATSE stagehands or workers out there in South Carolina. May no scabs work that show.
That is just so, it's like, at least you've got something like colorable with the, we're not going to let people be canceled and we're going to use talented actors with the Gina Carano thing. Like it was like she had some kind, I don't even remember what it was, but it was an opinion that she had that was problematic in one way or another. So at least it's something like colorable with what she said, but I mean, literally a woman beater. And they're like, this is my Judeo-Christian values demand that I pay, millions of dollars to woman beaters to be on my shows.
And then disregard safety and then exploit the workers.
Yeah, and then abuse the rank and file workers who make normal money putting together the set. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Very, very weird situation. Would love to talk to the IATSE folks out there in South Carolina. So if anyone has contacts out there, let us know, or give us a call, leave us a voicemail during the week. Let us know what's going on. Would love to hear some of the juicy details. It sounds like it's probably, not to make light of it, it's probably a funny struggle. It's probably pretty funny. I imagine there's some funny stuff going on. And I would like to hear the stories.
Stussy in the chat said, and another actor broke his collarbone, and they had explosions and gunfire.
Wow.
On the set, yeah. So it seems like a very professional sort of thing. So like Adam said, 844-899-TVLR. Particularly if you're in this South Carolina IATSE local and you're some of the people picketing it, call us. Let us know what's going on. Leave us a voicemail.
Send us some pictures.
Send us some pictures. That'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be great. And yeah, speaking of calls, we do have a caller on the line. This one from a 404 area code. Let's go ahead and bring them on the air. 404 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, I am the IA member, Steffi, that I wasn't there, but I do know people that were on the picket. They set people from Atlanta up. So, yeah, it was not good.
Is that local 479?
479 sent some people up, local 600, but South Carolina and North Carolina are actually 491.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, so that's it. So you
picketing.
So you knew some of the people up there that are picketing. What? Yeah. I mean, do you have any other information on like why they started picketing, or, yeah. What else do you have?
They, somebody has to call a show in like this. And so that's when the unions were made known of it. And there was, like I said in the chat, there was explosions and gunfire. They weren't union, but they had the money, because so many of these times the shows, the producers actually tell the crew they don't have the money when they actually do. But with being so slow, there was a lot of people that did scab the show. Not all of them were union members, period. But they actually finished shooting yesterday, from everything that I've heard.
I gotcha. So they finished shooting them, and so they're done with the movie then, as far as the production of it?
Yesterday was the actual last official shooting day. So
Okay.
they may do pickups later, but as of now, the main production is done.
Interesting. All right. Well, thanks for the added context. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I figured we knew somebody who knew somebody. We'll just add Union Buster to the list of offenses of these creeps.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that might wrap it up for us today, folks. 844-899-8857 is the phone number. 844-899-TVLR. Adam, unless you have anything else that you wanted to make sure we got to.
The last thing I'll say today is I would really love it if folks would leave us voicemails throughout the week telling us why you listen to the show. It could be as simple as, I'm Adam, I'm a stagehand, I listen to the Valley Labor Report because... let us know who you are, what kind of worker you are, what kind of union you're in. If you want to shout out your union, shout out your industry, your job. But we would love some voicemails like that where you could just let us know who you are and why you listen to the show. Give us feedback. You can always send us a note, of course, send us an email, but we would love some voicemails. I think that would be really cool to hear from folks from not just across the South, but from wherever you're listening in from. We have fans all over the place, we know, from online and, of course, from our radio audience. So let us know, how do you listen to the show? Why do you listen to the show, and who you are? That would be great. We would love to get some more of those to play and to share with folks and just lift that up.
All right. That's it for us this week, folks. We'll see you next week.